All right. Welcome, ladies, to this special episode of the She Is Extraordinary podcast. I'm sitting here with a woman that I met on July 9th. She is my brand photographer, but she really brands herself as a wedding photographer here in town in Charleston, but she's absolutely amazing. And so before I bring her on to say hello, I want to talk her out. Let me tell you something. I have worked with many photographers, some calling themselves specifically brand photographers and others, just more generic photographers. But I have never worked with someone who came with an energy of such positivity and love, and made me feel so comfortable and made me feel so beautiful as with Emma. So I'm so excited to introduce her to you. I want to talk a little bit about business as well as just life. So welcome, Emma Allen with Emma Lily Photography.
Hello, I'm happy to be here with you today.
Oh my goodness.
So many nice things you've said. So
well, Emma, it was just really neat. I met Emma online. Okay. I just moved into town in Charleston. So for any of those photographers out there listening and you're like, oh, how did you find her? Okay. I interviewed a bunch of photographers. And when I spoke with Emma, and Emma had no idea I was going to talk about this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I instantly loved how Emma was very professional, like called me right back or reached right out to me very timely. That's huge for me, because if you're not responsive, then I don't really dig what you're doing because I'm busy. And I know how I do things, and I want the same from my vendor. So she was that. She had this questionnaire to really get her to know my brand when she knew this was going to be a brand shoot. And she has done, she also does brand shoot. So you've seen my pictures. They're fabulous. So for anybody out there, you've got to do it right. And you've got to approach your business as a business. So before we dive into the real thing we want to talk about, which is learning to prioritize faith, family, and you, I do want to talk on this a little bit, Emma. So can you tell the ladies a bit about your background and how you came to build such a successful business in a brand new city?
I quit my job abruptly. It was in 2017, and I had been in multifamily real estate for almost 12 years. And through there, I had worked my way up the corporate ladder and had extreme success in my career. I loved it, but it started to really take a toll on me, especially when I became a mother. I remember that it was right around when my son turned 2. I was like, no, something's got to give. I'm missing my child's life. And I can't do this. I want a family, and I can't put all of my time into, corporate America and lose out on that time with my husband, and my son. And so we made the very brave decision to put our house in the market that we had just renovated, and decide to, put all of our everything into faith. Like, okay, it's going to work out. We're just going to pray and hope it works out. We had never even stepped foot in Charleston. We had never visited. So we put our house in the market. It sold within just, I think, less than 2 weeks, if I remember right. And we packed up a Penske truck and drove across country into a city that we had never been. And before that, I had this epiphany because people kept saying, you take beautiful photos. It was a hobby of mine. And you should be a photographer. And people had said that for years. And I was like, maybe I should be. Maybe I should be a photographer. And I invested in, one of the first things that I did was I came up with a business plan. Before I put a single penny into photography, I did a lot of research. I did my cost analysis of when I would get my return on investment and how I needed to price my packages and photos and how many I needed to book within how certain time to have a appropriate return on investment to make it actually worth, doing, because I couldn't not make money forever. So
Right.
Starting a business is expensive. And so I presented my business plan to my husband like he was some investor like I had worked with in property management. And I remember he told me, this better not end up being a very expensive hobby. And I said, oh, you watch. It's not going to be. And I never did a free session. It was something, a lot of photographers will say, trainers will say, do free sessions to build your portfolio, do free sessions to build your portfolio. You got to get people in front of you. And I was like, I'm not going to approach it that way. I'm going to approach it. I'm going to give you 3 free prints for being my model. And you can buy your gallery at a discount at 50% off if you love it. And so what I would do is I did that for my first ones, and every single person that I did the quote unquote kind of free sessions, every single person purchased. And every time part of my business plan was to slowly per, session I booked was to increase my prices and increase them slowly. And I knew from running businesses, you have to be everywhere. It builds credibility to have an online presence, to have a social media presence, to have a website, and be everywhere, and get those and really invest in getting, reviews. And I created a referral business and so much more I put into it, just because I knew to build momentum, I needed to win my clients, and I won them by serving them. I served them the best I could, and continued to serve them and treat them kindly and, with professionalism, and really come in with a passion and, show them that. And I think it really showed. And I hit the ground running in Charleston, and it's been amazing. And it's, I've had tears, I've had the rough times, but, overall it's been a great experience. So.
Well, you and I just chatted before I actually hit the record button that in 6 months you had gotten to 6 figures, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And you mentioned also, hey, I'm creative. Obviously, let's look at the pictures, but you approached your business as a business first. So what do you see out there? Because I know you have your sights on helping other photographers who may not be so business savvy. So what are you seeing out there for the average photographer?
One thing I see time and time again is that people don't create a business model. They put the money out there and they have no plan of how to make that money back. And they don't understand return on investment, fully. Like, it's, oh my gosh, I hear all the time, I've invested so much, but I haven't booked. I'm not booked. And one of the things I'm like, did you create a plan? Did you have a timeline of how much you needed to do in order to have that return? And usually it's kind of blank stares. It's, no, I hadn't even thought about that. I just thought I needed the fanciest camera and this education and all of this. I'm like, well, yes, you do need education and you need professional type of gear. You don't need it all at once, but you also need a plan, and you need a plan of how you're going to accomplish that. And then you also need to reevaluate. I always talk in it, with my business, I do SWOT analysis, and it's, I could tell you every time I bring that up to another photographer, they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, wait, and you have to continue to evaluate what you're doing and where your weaknesses are and where your strengths are, so you can continue to push and grow. And that was one of the things that, I booked my very first wedding without ever having shot a wedding. And, I never told them that I shot weddings or this and that. When they got a hold of me, kind of like you, they got a hold of me, I was timely, I was professional. I did not kind of go by the flying by the seat pants. Yeah. I had a questionnaire. I had a consultation lined up. I had practiced my consultations, like with my husband, of how I would say it to come across with confidence, to answer the questions with confidence, and, invest that time with them, that they trusted me. They trusted me. And I went into their photography with giving my all. It was, I'm going to keep doing this training. I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep practicing. I'm going to keep doing everything I can to best serve them. And I booked one wedding. I booked another wedding. And they just kept flowing in. And I really put it in a lot that I made a goal. And then I came to the table prepared. And I think one of the biggest things is some of the photographers, they have no idea how to approach a consultation. It's nerve-wracking, of course. Mm-hmm. And it's, knowing, yes, learn from experience, but also if you make yourself prepared, you're going to come across as the expert and not timid, and people are going to be more likely to invest their money into you versus talking to somebody that's like, yeah, I'll figure that out kind of thing.
Yeah. So, this is so good. So can you tell the ladies listening, what does SWOT stand for? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Okay. Yeah. So if you've never heard of the term SWOT analysis, that's what we're talking about, where you're looking at what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where are your opportunities given your special something? And where are your threats? You need to know who your competitors are and how they do things and pricing and things like that. I just want to say what you mentioned right now, Emma, about consults and being confident. A couple of things I want to say on that. Number one, when I had a retreat in Florida, and obviously I'm not in Florida, and so I had a couple of phone consults, I would say the vast majority of them were obviously not comfortable answering basic questions like pricing. When it came to pricing, they were like, humming. And, oh, well, and I could just tell they weren't comfortable. And, the other thing I wanted to mention is you mentioned just now that you booked a wedding without having done a wedding. So I love that. And that, by the way, is similar to putting a course out there without having done the course. Mm-hmm. And you deliver it live. And that's when you work out the kinks, and then maybe it can become evergreen. But anyway, that's a side note. But how did that feel? Like when you were driving to that first wedding or wherever you were meeting them and you had never shot a wedding before. I love how really ballsy that is. Tell us what that felt like.
Oh, I was scared. I mean, I honestly was terrified because I kept thinking, what if I mess it up? What if, I don't want to mess it up. And I kept going over and I'm like, but you're prepared. You're prepared. You don't let them see you sweat, and that's one right. of the things that I think that really helped with me is, my dad always told me throughout growing up my entire life. I remember I was trying to get into a beauty pageant, and it was the first time he had said it really is, well, I was so nervous about the interview. And he goes, well, just act like you've been there before. And I was like, okay. And he goes, they act like you've been there before and it'll be fine. And I've taken that approach with every single job interview I've ever had in my life.
I love
it. Taken that approach with coming to that wedding because I was literally sweating. I probably should have changed my top by the time I got there. I was so nervous, but the second I got out of my car, I was like, game face. Here we go. I've been here before. I've done this before. And I had not. But I just approached it that way. I approached it with, I'm going to act like I've done this before, and I'm going to serve them with all of my heart. And I think one of the biggest things that has been a big thing in my business is the reason why I do the photos and why I have such a passion is because I truly believe in capturing people. And I truly believe in capturing moments. And, it's very close to my heart. So having that passion going into it, and knowing that I'm serving somebody, I think really helped me also be able to go in there. But yes, before and after, I was very, very nervous. I got in the car and I was like, oh, it was certainly a lot.
Wow, that is so good. And I hope that will inspire the listeners. If anyone is new in their business, I'm telling you, I'll never forget when I've done many things in my life. When I first got my real estate license back in 2008, I'll never forget my first appointment. And I, like you, I didn't want them to know that I had never done a deal before. And they were praising me throughout. And I was smart. When I didn't have the answer, I called my broker. And so I'm sure with you, if you didn't have an answer, you would have some sort of resource to go to. So listen to that, ladies. Successful people jump in and just do it. And having done the prep they could do to get ready for it. So that's great. All right, let's transition to the topic really that we wanted to dig into today, because when you and I were together, we had such a great sister in Christ time together. It was just so
Yeah.
much fun. And one of the things you mentioned was the passing of your father and how that kind of just changed things for you as far as priorities. So I would so appreciate if you would share a little bit of that now with with our listeners.
Absolutely. So, being a business owner, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well. We're in a day and age where people are accustomed to people being available 24/7, and being your own business owner, you have all the pressure of wearing all of the hats.
Mm-hmm.
You are everything. And you also have this incredible pride in your own business. It's yours. You have ownership, and you pour your heart into it. It's like a child of yours, and you invest so much of your energy into it, and it can take a toll. And when I was starting the business, as I said, I grew a business into 6 figures in 6 months. That's a lot to have on your shoulders. That's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of people who invested a lot of money into me. That means I have to be able to provide what I promised.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the social media where you feel like you have to keep up, and you might be seeing things on social media that aren't true. They're simply not true, but it feels true. And you start that comparison, and then you just run yourself into the mud. And that's what I was doing. I had my priorities completely wrong. I would say no to anything that was personal. I gained a ton of weight, an embarrassing amount of weight over a course of 3 years, because an hour workout was not a priority, because in my mind, I had convinced myself I have to keep editing. I have to edit. And I gained all this weight to deliver a gallery an hour early. And, at the end of the day, what I had learned is, I put all of my clients first. I put them first and foremost. They were right here. My faith, family, myself was at the bottom. And, I really, by the time that I gave everything else in front, I had nothing for me, nothing, which led me into, a depression. It led me into extreme anxiety, and it led me into a place that I didn't even know I was at until the day that my dad went into an ICU after his surgery was the day that I decided I needed help. So it was my very first therapy appointment with a counselor. And then later that afternoon, I got the call about my father, and my life went completely on hold. I flew back to Colorado with my husband and son that evening, and immediately proceeded to spend the next 2 weeks straight in the ICU by my dad's side. And during that time, I learned that my priorities were so messed up, and they were so completely not okay. It wasn't okay. And I learned that as we are business owners, that doesn't mean that our lives don't matter. That doesn't mean that we don't matter. Mm-hmm. We don't need to keep up with, or what we think we're keeping up with. We don't need that available 24/7 mindset. Mm-hmm. We need to set boundaries, and we need to stick to that boundaries. If you say you're off at 2 p.m., you're off at 2 p.m. It doesn't matter if it's for a client or for personal. Carving out your personal time is just as important as carving out the time for your business. And we can't neglect that. And once we say yes, we keep that spiral. And you end up in a situation where your clients aren't always going to give you the grace. You might have bent over backwards for them, as I did for a particular client, I had done over the course of 2 years working with, bent over backwards. And when it came to my dad and my personal life, I wasn't treated with grace. I was treated as a business transaction. Mm-hmm. And what I learned is I gave up time. Not just for this client, but time and time again. And that I put faith behind. I put my son on the back burner. I put my husband on the back burner. I put my health on the back burner for people who they don't owe me what, like my husband does or anything, they're not a partnership. They booked me to be a wedding photographer, and, I owe them a certain amount of customer service, and I owe them what my contract states, but I don't owe them all of me. And it's so important to realize that you have to reprioritize, or you will burn yourself out, and it will reflect in your business. It will reflect in all of your areas of your life. And you cannot be your best self if you are on empty. You can't. And you can't serve your clients if you're on empty.
Right. There's so much there. I just want to unwrap a little bit. One thing that I see that so many women business owners are doing is they are literally attached to the phone.
Absolutely.
And, I think some of the gurus out there, be they business coaches like myself or social media gurus or whatnot, they're like, oh, wait a minute. If somebody comments on your Instagram, you better jump on it because that pesky algorithm won't like it if you don't. Well, I'm sorry. I'm not going to rule my life on what some so-called expert says, number one, or number two, what machine is going to like or don't like. So, and I know that can feel hard, but I really get, and I appreciate your vulnerability here, Emma, because I am not the best at self-care either. I never have been. Like my parents sacrificed everything for me, everything. And so I am very sacrificial and I love my clients. Oh, what do you need? What do you need? But I'm just coming off of a week's vacation where I pretty much was off the grid and it felt great. And I don't even, to be honest with you, I don't want to get back on the grid, to be honest with you, as far as social media. But one last thing I'll say, then I'll open it up. But besides being attached to the phone for social, I see women feeling as if they need to jump on email. And so they're working on a task and it goes bing, bing, bing. Oh, got to get off my task and answer the email. And they're constantly being distracted. So I'm curious, did you struggle with that at one point, Emma?
Absolutely. And it's still something I'm working on now. But what I'm learning is my ideal client will wait. My ideal person will not, they still want to work with me if I say, for example, my weekends that don't have weddings, they're for my family. It doesn't matter if it's for a wedding or not. Those are my days off. And I set it where my complimentary engagement sessions can only be done Monday through Thursday. And it's a boundary. And there have been people that had, oh, I can only do it on weekends. And I'm like, you can't take one day off of the week for, an engagement session, and they'll say, oh, that's a deal breaker. That's okay. I'm okay with that because I only have about 20 weekends with my family a year. And it's a deal breaker for me to give up those small amount of times anymore. What I learned is I did that just recently. I said, no, they passed on me and I was okay with it. I was okay. I was confident and I put my faith out there that the right person was going to come along. And lo and behold, the next week, somebody reached out and they wanted a weekend. And I said, unfortunately, these are my availability. And they changed their availability in order to meet mine because they wanted me. They wanted me. They wanted to work with me. And they were willing to make that change and meet me halfway to do that. And your ideal client will. Your email does not have to be always answered at all times. Yes, I understand. Believe me, I want to be as responsive as possible, but it takes you away from what you're working on. And you need to set aside time to do your emails. Once you've done them, leave them alone for that day or check them again at a set aside time. And I've been doing that. Once I'm done for the day, I'm done. I'll hear the ding and I'm like, it's okay. But I also went ahead and I said, okay, well, I am fearful that I'll miss out on a lead. So what I did is work smarter, not harder. I set up my client relationship management system to automatically send emails for me with all of the details as if I replied. It's delayed and everything. So it seems like it took me like 10 or 15 minutes to send it. And they don't know any different. They don't. Wow. And it can work for me when I'm not working. So I think if it's a thing that gives you anxiety, create a system, put away, during the day, once you're done with emails and you are worried about your clients not thinking you're responsive, put out a message on your email to send to them that says, your email safely landed in my box. These are my hours. I'm going to be replying just reiterating your boundary to your client, and they'll see that they got a response. They know it made it safely into your box. So they're not going to start trying to get you on other avenues. It's just setting up those boundaries and sticking to them.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Years ago, one of my mentors said to me, Judy, you're training people as to how to treat you. You're training them. And at first I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm training them. But just what you said, when you confidently, not arrogantly, just confidently state, this is my policy. I am done for the day on Fridays at 3, or I only do these shoots, whatever. That's excellent. And the right person. And I love how you emphasize that, your ideal client, because we can't work for everybody. We don't want to work for the tire kickers and the people that are pains in the butt. We want to work with the ideal client. So that's who we're speaking to when we do our social posts, when we do our blog posts and everything else. So that's great. All right. So this is good. Yeah. For me, I do my emails first thing in the morning.
Me too.
I occasionally check at lunch, not always. And then at about 3 or 4, I go. And that used to feel so horrible, Emma. I was like, oh, this feels so bad. And guess what? Life continues. I have more clients now than ever. They are more high quality clients. So ladies, take the plunge if you haven't. Okay. Take it from Emma and me. Okay. So what other boundaries? Can you talk about any other boundaries that you've set to, keep work and be able to have your priorities intact?
One of the things that I have set as far as boundaries is, for example, if it's something that has to do with my family, it comes before, work, and I have to work on it so much every day. For example, yesterday was a prime example. I felt a little overwhelmed. I just came off the busiest season of my entire career. I fit, tons of brides from 2020 into an already jam-packed 2021 spring season. So I was overextended, and not on purpose. It was because of what happened in 2020. And so I feel that pressure on me. And so when I was at my computer yesterday and I was working and I was kind of in a groove, my husband says, do you want to go to Noah's first guitar lessons? And I said, I really have a lot to do. And, he was like, okay, that's fine. I understand you have work. And so they were packing up, and it hit me. Emma, no. This is a boundary. You have worked all day. You logged in, you worked all day. There is no deadline being missed. There is nothing that you have gotten back to everything you said you would do. You need to close the computer and go with your family. And I did. I had to have that internal conversation in my head and, push me out the door. But it's saying yes to the things that are my top priorities and remembering to say no to those things that are less on the priority list. And, setting boundaries as far as having set dates throughout the year, looking at my calendar in advance and saying, these are dates that I'm not willing to leave, setting boundaries in the fact that, personal priorities of health, working out, setting aside a time to work out and eat right and go to the doctors. And also, honestly, I'll just say it too, setting boundaries with your own family. We get in a position where it's like, as women, we've got to be the perfect moms. We've got to be the perfect wives. We've got to be the girl boss, the hustler, and, perfect friend. And we just get run dry. And it is okay to say no. It is okay to say no. And it is not going to be the end of the world. And you can do it in a graceful way to people without them seeming that you don't want to be a part of their lives, but you don't have to go to every birthday party. You can say, we'll go to X amount, but we are doing this for us. You don't have to say yes to every obligation. You don't.
Yeah. That is so good. And I think that some women should listen back to this more than once to really be encouraged, because as you mentioned, Emma, my mother is no longer with me, but, I remember, sometimes we have the moms, the well-intentioned moms in our ears, you have to do this. And then, the best friend saying, oh my gosh, if you don't come to this, and there's so much pressure. But at the end of the day, we really do have to keep the Lord Jesus Christ first.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then the family, and also to take care of us. And I always go back to that airplane thing. Okay. When the masks drop, if they lose pressure, you've got to take care of you first. Otherwise, you'll pass out and won't be able to help your child. And so we have to keep these things top of mind when we're feeling pressure. We need to, as women, I don't know, I think God made us to be so empathetic and so caring that it almost feels bad when we have to say no. But this people pleasing thing, that coupled with perfectionism in women, those are two of the most toxic, things. We really do need to recover from that. Yeah. So I may be overstating it, but I, from what I see in my work, I just see that brings so many women down.
I think also social media does. I think that people really need to set a boundary with social media. It is not something that people are only going to show the good, and it's something that I've taken a lot of backlash on personally on my social media. Is I have shared the bad. I have, said when I have failed. I have said when I didn't feel like a good mom. And I've taken a lot of backlash, but I've also had a lot of people come to me and say, thank you for being authentic and truly authentic, not, because honestly, we go through social media and we're all seeing these perfect lives and these well put together homes when reality is they may have just cleaned up a corner of their home.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they could be living in complete chaos otherwise. And they may have just put like those kind of jokes on that you see where the guys are wearing the suit on the top and a pair of boxers on the bottom of their Zoom calls. It's not reality is not what you're seeing through social media. It's not what you're reading. And you have to understand that you have to set a boundary with social media. You cannot let yourself go through this endless comparison game of comparing yourself to things that are truly not reality.
Yeah, not real.
And
for sure.
I think that's I have stepped away from social media quite a bit. I still think it's very important for business, but I don't spend hours scrolling anymore, answering comments or posting, and I'll take days where I don't even open it anymore if I already feel drained because it's not going to add any value to my life. So
there you go. And I love that. I love that you've identified that, so that's really great. Well, we're running out of time. So I have just a couple of last minute questions. Yeah. So the ladies that are listening that want to seek you out, where can they find you?
On my website, it's emmalilyphotography.com and
emmalilyphotography.com. Okay, great.
Lily is spelled Lili. So, and there I have a contact form, and I also have, I hope to be opening soon some mentorships and training and stuff for women and business owners and photographers. And there's a waiting list that you can also enter there. So, and also social media, you can't, even though I'm not always on it, but you can always reach out to me through Instagram and follow me there. And I get back to people as soon as I can. So
awesome. And is that also at Emma Lily Photography?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Last question. This is called the She Is Extraordinary podcast. So I would love for you, Emma, to share with us an extraordinary woman in your life and what makes her extraordinary.
Oh, I have so many.
Only one. You got to pick one.
Oh my goodness. I was not anticipating that question. It's a very hard one.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't want, I do that almost every time at the end, but I don't want to tell you ahead because I want you to just, give me the first one that comes to mind.
First one that comes to mind, oh my gosh, there's just I really honestly can't. I really just think there's so many extraordinary women that I have met in my life, but it's really hard for me to pinpoint somebody. But honestly, I'm going to say my mother, even though she's no longer with me. It's the first one that comes to mind. And it's because my mom had 11 years with me, and she left a lifelong impact on my heart about just how to be a good person. And she was an extraordinary woman, and she loved everybody and accepted everybody. And she loved wholeheartedly. And I think one of the things that people, she truly loved. And I think that's the biggest thing that made her extraordinary, is she just knew how to love. So,
wow, that's awesome. And moms are, I'd say, the majority of answers for the people that I have on the show.
yeah.
Well, Emma, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciated this interview. And whether someone's listening is a business owner or just a wonderful woman who loves the Lord, you've given us so much to think about. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed doing this.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, ladies, listen, if you have enjoyed this episode, will you please take a moment and leave a rating and a review, especially if you're on iTunes, because they mean so much. And by the way, I love your feedback. Find me at Judy Weber Co. and let me know, hey, do you know somebody amazing, a woman that's extraordinary that I need to interview? Or do you have a hot topic that you'd love us to cover? Be sure to let me know. So thanks again for listening, and we will see you next time.